On the morning of July 1st, it seemed like just another normal day in English football. On TalkSport, the breakfast show discussion was centered around Manchester United's 3-0 win against Brighton the night before.
Crazy thing to say, but he's beginning to sound like a Manchester United manager, do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
Do you know what I mean? It might be a crazy thing to say, but he's beginning to sound like a Manchester.
On Sky Sports, they were looking at Black Lives Matter and football.
The Premier League, meanwhile, says that they will continue to back players showing solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. Players are not allowed to show support for political...
Then a bomb dropped.
Come back to Sky Sports News. Major news this lunchtime now. Championship side Wigan Athletic have today been placed in administration. Now, we've heard from many experts that teams were facing huge financial challenges, of course, as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. Well, here's the first major example of that. Wigan, 14th in the Championship.
This means a mandatory 12-point deduction for the club and potentially liquidation. Today, we tell the story of how Wigan fans are fighting to keep their club alive and kicking.
To put you exactly in my shoes, I was actually at my grandma's house.
Jay Whittle is a Wigan fan and freelance contributor to the Wigan Evening Post and Observer.
I was helping run a few errands, and I saw it on the news, on Sky News.
Devastating news for supporters who were celebrating just yesterday that 3-0 win over Stoke, which of course brings them up to 14th in the Championship in less than a month.
I sat there for a good couple of minutes thinking, what's happened here?
I found out we were going into administration through a message. I was actually driving home from work.
Adam Conroy is the secretary for the Wigan Supporters Club.
I'd been into our Manchester office to collect something. I was driving home and a message popped up through my hands-free on my phone to say that we'd entered administration. At first I didn't really know what it meant, really. I presumed it was the football club because of the person the message came from. So quickly I turned my radio to TalkSport, and Mr. Whelan happened to be on the radio discussing it with Jim White on TalkSport.
I'm in total shock. I cannot believe it. I'll have to stick my nose in a little and have a look what's going on, or see if I can find out what's caused it. How much are they in liquidation for? I'll have to just try, because the people of Wigan will be in absolute shock, because I am.
Just the night before, Wigan had convincingly beaten Stoke 3-0 at home, and the win had put the club 8 points out of the relegation zone, giving fans hope that they were in the Championship for another season. Up till that point, there had been no suspicion that the club could end up in administration.
To see this happen is unbelievable, really. There's usually signs like we've seen at Bolton Wanderers, Bury, other clubs that have gone into administration, but there was no indication, there was no real signs of this happening until it happened.
Joint Administrator Paul Stanley agreed with that. Speaking to Sky Sports, he said that the finances of the club looked in good shape before this unexpected decision.
Simply, the club's been, from what we can see, relatively well run. They've been doing well on the pitch. They run well day to day. Got an experienced board, a chairman that's been around 10 years. There's been a change of ownership recently, and from what we can see, the change of ownership just decided they didn't want to fund anymore.
Our new owners prior to that had invested in our academy. Our academy's been upgraded to a Category 2. We went further in the FA Youth Cup than we've ever been, taking around about 3,000 fans to Old Trafford for the quarter-final against Man United. So there was absolutely no indications that this could happen.
In fact, the club had been purchased just a month earlier in bizarre and mysterious fashion.
We know that IEC, who were the owners of Wigan, they'd effectively said they got a bit bored. I think the owner, Stanley Choi, he decided that he'd lost interest and was therefore trying to find somebody new to buy the club. So he sold it to something called the Next Leader Fund. And this seems strange because Next Leader Fund appeared to be controlled by Stanley Choi. And then a few days later, the ownership was changed to somebody called Al Young. and nobody seems to know anything at all about him.
Because of that and multiple statements by administrators now running the club, at first many fans and media members speculated it was one of the first clubs succumbing to the new financial realities of COVID-19.
The suspension of the championship season due to COVID-19 has had a significant impact on the recent fortunes for the club.
Obviously, the COVID situation looks to have had an impact with the loss of gate receipts and match day income, which is, the club is funded as well. So with that funding not being available, that's it. But it looks at the moment with the interruption that's been caused by COVID, that seems to be one of the main issues.
However, many members of the media, ex-players and ex-coaches questioned how this could all happen.
Why spend all of that money buying a business if you've got no intention of running the business and you've got no guarantee of getting your money back from buying that business? A lot of people have said, well, this has got to be linked to COVID. I think it's completely independent of COVID, and it makes people are right to be asking questions and to feel very uncomfortable.
A new company set up, an existing director transferred into that, but nobody really knows who are actually part of this company, who the owners are. I believe people in the club are still unaware of who they are, which is extremely strange that the EFL have managed to pass this through.
I think now the Football League needs to go a bit further and use this as a case that it shouldn't be a choice to send the football club into administration, and maybe put in structures in place that doesn't allow that to happen. I'm sure that
That day, on July 1st, while fans and the media speculated about how this was all happening, the new administrators responsible for selling the club sat down with the Wigan supporters group.
As a supporters club, we were contacted by the administrators. Our chair, Caroline, and vice chair, Mick, were invited to meet them at the club because under EFL rules, in this situation, the club has to be offered to the fans first. If they have an official supporters club, it has to be offered to them first. Unfortunately, we don't have the funds to buy the club, but we did ask, what can we do in this situation? And the message was that we need to be able to fulfil the fixtures in the first instance, so the remaining 6 games as it was. So we put a plan of action in place to raise funds to pay for that, to ensure that the club does finish the season, which would make it a lot more prospective to any buyers.
From there, the 10-person hierarchy of the supporters club met virtually to discuss their next steps.
We decided as a committee that we would try and raise funds to get us to the end of the season. We spoke with the administrators and they gave us a rough idea of how much that would be. As a supporters club, we pledged the first £10,000 towards it. And then from then we raised the crowdfunder page through help with the owner of that, a gentleman called Murray Toms, who's actually a director at Cheltenham Town. He's been great with us, giving us advice on how to run it and allowing us to draw funds down from that whenever we need to, as opposed to only being able to access them at the end of the project that we're running.
At around the same time, Jay Whittle was launching his own campaign on social media. On July 2nd, he wrote an open letter to MPs, the EFL, and football fans at large.
I think what motivated me to write the letter was the pure emotion of it. Finding out that your club is in administration and the potential repercussions it could have on a financial and community level, I thought to myself, I can't sit here and do nothing. It's not in my personality just to sit back and just watch things unfold in front of me. I wanted to make a difference and I wanted to give a voice to the fans, because I know a lot of people had ideas of writing an open letter. With my journalism background, I thought to myself, I do probably have the writing ability to do quite a good open letter, and I just kind of wanted to see how it could do and who we could appeal to, because I feel like the more people that know the story of Wigan Athletic, the more chance we have got of surviving and gaining the help we deserve.
Then the letter went viral. On Twitter, it has been shared nearly 2,000 times and seen by 550,000 people.
The response to that open letter has been absolutely brilliant. It's been beyond any expectations. It's exceeded every possible expectation for me. We've had Lisa Nandy, who is the Labour MP and the Wigan MP, and Andy Burnham, who is the Greater Manchester Mayor. They've actively been helping our cause, and they also wrote an open letter to the EFL. to appeal and suspend the 12-point deduction, which is obviously mandatory.
In Whittle's open letter, he questioned how the club was able to be purchased and then within 1 month be put into administration.
It just kind of pinpointed a few of the grey areas of how just a month after he took over the club, he was put in administration. And as part of the EFL's owners and directors test, which is otherwise known as the fit and proper persons test, owners must prove to have 2 years worth of finance. And I kind of questioned how did he possibly pass that test, and then obviously announce the club's in administration. It didn't make sense. It still doesn't make sense. And I just thought to myself, if I can kind of spread this message, what's happened, and appeal to anyone who'd listen, it might go a long way in helping our club.
As the days passed, the pressure on the EFL began to mount and rumors began to swirl. A video emerged of EFL chairman Rick Parry suggesting that this might have derived from a bet made by the owner in the Philippines.
There's all sorts of rumours. There's rumours that there's a bet in the Philippines and I'm being relegated.
During this time, the Wigan supporters group were able to mobilize and raise awareness about their crowdfunding campaign. The campaign was called Let's Hang On.
The name of the campaign, Let's Hang On, comes from the Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons song, which is a song that our fans have sang for probably about 20 years now, dating back to the Paul Jewell days where we were famous for winning games 1-0 and not conceding. So we decided to call it that because at the end of the day, we want to hang on to our club. The idea is basically to get as much funding as we possibly can to help the club through this time, get them to the end of the season first and foremost, and then take as much as we can from there. But not just that, we don't just want to save our club. The stories that have come out since the administration is something that as football fans we feel strongly about, and it's something that we want to ensure doesn't happen to any other football club. What's happened to us could basically happen to anybody. If an owner decides he doesn't want to put any more money in, this could be every club in the country.
But when it came to advocacy, the supporters club knew that all of their messaging had to target the EFL.
First and foremost, we want to reach out to the EFL. Obviously, we're faced with a 12-point deduction, which the club themselves are appealing, so we'll leave that to them. But as fans, we want to speak to the EFL. We want to find out what happened in this situation, how these people were allowed to do what they've done. It's widely commented on, the fit and proper directors test that the EFL undertakes. We simply just want to discuss that with them and make it the catalyst for change, I guess, to protect any other football clubs.
Joining fans were Wigan MP Lisa Nandy and Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham.
But we also want to make sure that the EFL are doing everything that they can right now to help us find not just a buyer, but a buyer that has the long-term interests of Wigan Athletic at heart.
A very, very worrying state of affairs that a club could just be plunged into this level of crisis pretty much from nowhere. Major questions, I think, here for the game's regulatory authorities as to how they vet potential owners of football clubs.
Then, on July 6th, the supporters group wrote their own letter to the EFL.
So we wrote a letter to the EFL asking them to investigate this situation. We did ask that the 12-point deduction was suspended until this investigation was completed. The club have obviously appealed that deduction themselves. But we just want to find out what happened in this situation, why did it happen, how was it allowed to happen, and what's to stop it happening again. Because as I said, we don't want this to happen to any other football club.
What was the response that you got from the EFL?
The EFL released a statement on Tuesday in which they said they'll consult with supporter groups. So we look forward to hearing from them and hopefully arranging a meeting to discuss it.
Do you feel like they're taking your letter seriously?
How seriously they take this case is something that we're very keen to speak to them on. We don't feel as though this is something that should be just brushed under the carpet, given a 12-point deduction and everybody moves on. We're now the 5th club, I think it is, to have issues in the last 2 years. Bolton, Bury obviously no longer in the Football League, Macclesfield. So we may be the 4th, to experience these issues. So it's not, we don't want to be given a 12-point deduction and everything swept under the carpet. This is something that is quite clearly an issue in the game, and we don't want it to happen again.
Meanwhile, at the same time, Whittle made a video for social media titled, "We are Wigan Athletic. We will save our football club."
Wigan Athletic entered sudden administration on Wednesday. While the circumstances around it is unforeseen, there's only one thing that's certain. Us Wigan Athletic fans have the same outlook. We will not stand for this.
It's Emerson Boyce deciding to carry Joseph Kendrick onto the Wembley turf on the club's biggest day, as he's one of our own.
It's Sam Morsey, putting a shirt over a cardboard cutout of a boy that sadly passed away. Never got the chance to watch the game at the stadium with his family.
Wigan Athletic are a very, very special club. If you're an outsider, you've never witnessed Wigan Athletic, you won't get it. You simply won't understand. You have to experience it to believe it. I know people who've played for the club over the years, they didn't quite realise what special community we've got until they was a part of it themselves. And the thing that makes Wigan Athletic is the fan bond. Everyone's there for each other. You can talk to anyone, you can chat to anyone. Everyone's friendly. If you've never met anyone before, you can join in conversations. And you're taking in from day one. It's once in, never out. Once you're a Wigan fan, you kind of have an affection for the club for the rest of your life.
Within the community, the club they've always been a family club. We look after our own. The Community Trust have been doing some amazing work throughout COVID, phoning elderly and vulnerable fans up just to have a chat, just to see how they're doing. They've been delivering food packages in the area to the vulnerable people that can't get out. The players have been Zoom calling local schools and local football teams as sort of a surprise. So they've been on, a local football team may have been on a Zoom call just to stay in touch, and then all of a sudden one of the Wigan players pops up in that. So we do so much as a club for the town and the fans, so it's something that can't be lost from the town and the community, really.
But since the club is such an important aspect of everyday life for some fans, Whittle began to worry about the mental health of his fellow supporters.
My next plan was to provide support for the fans, because Wigan Athletic is a community club, they're a family club, and as part of the club, we look out for each other. We're there for one another in times of adversity, and we needed to show solidarity against this. And I knew a lot of fans have been feeling a little bit down and mentally upset about it. They've been worried about their mental health with anxiety, and fears of losing the club has pushed them into a darker period of time. And I just wanted to create an initiative where people can know they've got their people there for them to look after and support their every need. And I've personally, although I've never had an experience with mental health myself, someone in my family, they had an ordeal with mental health last year, and it was extremely tough to see the effects of what mental health can have. And it gave me that inspiration, because I didn't want anyone else to go through what my family member went through. And it plays on my mind massively, that experience. And if I can help, say, just one person from it happening to, I'll do everything I can.
So far, there's been a positive response from fans.
It's been a massive response since we've launched that project. We've had over 120 members in our first couple of days, and fans are already opening up about their experience with mental health. One message we had is, there's this a guy from Wigan who he suffers from social anxiety, so he doesn't really feel comfortable talking to his friends and family. He struggles to join in with conversations, but at Wigan, it's a complete opposite. He's happy to join in conversations. He don't feel any feelings of that social anxiety, and he's worried that if Wigan do go bust, he doesn't know what he's going to do. And obviously that just echoes how important this group is, because I know there's a lot of people feeling like that, and if we can kind of create a virtual community and hopefully make it a physical community in the future, it'll be a delight to connect more fans, make more friends out of this. And obviously we're suffering a really dark time at the club at the moment. We've had 75 non-playing staff being made redundant, and if we can kind of create a community where we're there for one another, and even if we do survive this and even come out stronger and have this community after this, it's a job well done for everyone involved. And I'm so proud of every member who's joined and every person who's helped support the campaign and who's been really vocal in sharing the idea. We've had some support from former players, MPs, and it looks like the future's going to be really bright for that supporters group. And I'm just glad to be one of the many fans involved in looking out for one another, because it's the most important thing we can do in a time like this.
Both Whittle and the Wigan Supporters Club know that despite all the work they've done so far, this is just the beginning.
To keep this as relevant as possible, we need to continue to push the EFL. If the club does get a 12-point deduction or doesn't, if the club is relegated or stays up, we can't just move on to next season if we get a new buyer and think everything's okay. This is something that we need to continue to push until there are either answers from the EFL that are satisfactory or that there's a change, and it's the change that at the moment we're pushing for, because too many clubs are being faced with this situation. Too many fan bases, too many communities are being faced with this situation because of mismanagement from club owners.
It's our job to put the pressure on and make the right decision, but only the EFL can really make the decisions to hold someone accountable. At this moment in time, we don't know who's to blame. That's why they're doing a thorough investigation by an independent board. And for us, it's just a case of waiting for the outcome, really, and hoping it's the outcome we all want. I think it would be very unfair to impose a 12-point deduction, because not only have we been living through the coronavirus pandemic, it's no fault of our own. You should not punish the fans for an action of someone else. The fans are completely not to blame. The staff aren't to blame. The players aren't to blame. It's really not our fault, and I think for the EFL, they've got a massive decision now to hopefully reform their policies and make a change for football for the good. It's happened to clubs before, Bolton, Bury, and we're hoping we can use this case to change the footballing world for the better and improve the English Championship game.
If you'd like to support the Let's Hang On crowdfunding campaign, there is a link in our episode description below. Jay Whittle is a Wigan fan and freelance contributor to the Wigan Evening Post and Observer. Adam Conroy is the secretary of the Wigan Supporters Club, and you can learn more about them at wiganathleticsupportersclub.co.uk. Also, we'd like to give a big thank you to everyone who filled out the Football Today survey over the last week, and say congratulations to Zach Morrow for winning our prize. This episode was produced by John McKenzie. I'm Josh Schneider-Weiler, and thanks for listening to Football Today. And before you go, if you're a fan of the show and would like to support us, sign up to our Patreon page where you'll get access to bonus episodes and extra content. And if you can't spare the cash, tell a friend instead. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.